Hello, welcome to today's episode of Living Naturally with Michaela. I'm Michaela, your host and mind body connection specialist, and I'm so excited to dive into a topic that truly resonates with all aspects of our health and well being. Today's topic is building inner strength, the mental and emotional benefits of consistent movement practices. We often think that movement is something we do to stay fit or active, but today we're exploring how it's so much more than that. Movement is a profound tool for emotional healing, mental clarity, and cultivating resilience in the face of life's challenges. Whether it's yoga, Tai Chi, or simply walking, the way we move can directly influence how we feel and how we navigate the ups and downs of life. So I'm thrilled to be joined again today by my good friend, Dr. Michelle Greenwell, a Tai Chi and movement expert who has helped countless individuals unlock their inner strength through the art of intentional movement. Together, we'll unpack the science, share personal stories, and offer actionable tips to help you incorporate movement into your daily life for a healthier mind, body, and spirit. So grab a cup of tea, find a comfortable seat, and let's explore how consistent movement can empower you to build emotional resilience and reclaim your inner strength. All right, welcome, Dr. Michelle. So I'm happy to have you here once again. I love these conversations that we have. And for those of you who may be just tuning in for the first time, Dr. Michelle and I have these conversations, once a month at least.
Mm.
So, tune in to, hear Dr. Michelle and I talk about, mind body connection, particularly from the body side of things. Since she is a movement specialist, I like to bring her expertise in with this part of the mind, body, and spirit. And in addition to that, if you're just tuning in, she's also the tea maestro. So before we jump into our topic for today, let's ask her what tea she has today.
Yeah. All right. The tea today is actually one that you can't purchase off my site. I have a couple other blends that are close, but I'll be bringing this out in the new year. This is a blend that I made for my parents for their 60th wedding anniversary.
Ooh,
And
nice.
it's always lovely to bring a group of ingredients together that can reflect who people are. So
Yeah,
this one is celebrating dreams. And I thought
nice.
that would be wonderful as people are realizing kind of the potential of what 2025 is going to mean to them, how they want to move forward. This gives them a way to do that. And it has a lot of herbs in it, but I'm going to bring to forward for us today the grape leaves that come off the vines in
Okay.
my backyard. And grape leaves help with abundance and
Mhm.
prosperity, but if you start to think about the grape and the communication that all those grapes have when they're on the vine together, how we collectively, when we work together, how we really can support each other. And just by being present with each other in a room to do movement,
Mhm.
and do that. Or in our case, we're reaching out online today. So, how our connection with people actually can empower and move them forward.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. I'm gonna have to grab that one when you have that available in the new year. That sounds like an excellent tea blend. All
Cheers.
right. So as we get started on today's topic, I want to, again, as we talk about set the intention for the show. So, and in setting the intention for this show, I want those of you who are watching to kind of open yourself up to the idea that movement is more than physical. Okay. We often will think about movement as just, like I said, exercise or, a means to get from point A to point B. But movement is so much more than that. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Movement is a gateway to mental and emotional resilience. And that's what we want to bring forward today to help you get out of the mindset that movement is just for exercise. It's just for, mobility. It's so much more than that. And that's what we want to help you understand today, because movement can be a huge part of physical transformation. And we've often talked about the physical transformation, but I want you to understand that it can also be part of that emotional and mental transformation as well. So that's the part that we're going to be talking about today. And, I often talk about the mind body connection. That's my big thing, and how we have to look at the big picture and how everything is all interconnected. And so that's also going to be part of this discussion that we have today, because when we move, we heal, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. So let's start off with the science behind movement and emotional health. So I sometimes get a little geeky, because I'm a science girl. So, I'll try not to go too geeked out on you and use terms that most people have heard and understand. So, one of the main benefits of the physical activity of movement that can help us in the emotional and mental realm is the fact that physical activity stimulates the production of endorphins and serotonin, which are actual natural mood lifters. Do you agree with that, Dr. Michelle?
Absolutely. Yep.
And movement also helps reduce cortisol levels, which mitigates stress and anxiety. So, everyone's heard of cortisol, everybody's heard of stress hormones. Everyone knows how stress can affect your physical body, but stress can also, contribute to mental issues like anxiety, anxiety attacks, and anger and frustration and all of that stuff. So physical movement actually produces chemicals in the body that helps offset all of that. So you can see how that physical movement can have a direct effect on your emotional and mental well-being as well. So, I've had a client that struggled with anxiety, like severe, severe anxiety, but she was able to naturally find profound relief just by committing to walking 20 minutes a day. So she would get up, she'd go for a walk, 15, 20 minutes. Didn't matter, just go around the neighborhood, 15, 20 minutes. She did that consistently, and eventually her anxiety started to reduce and eventually go away. And the only thing that she changed really was taking a walk every morning. She'd get up in the morning, go for a walk, and that helped reduce that anxiety. It set the mood for the day. And she found that she started her day with less anxiousness, which made the entire day go so much better, which helped reduce the stress, which helped her sleep better at night. And then once she started sleeping better, other physical transformations also came about. And it all started with just making a choice to go take a walk. So I'm sure you've have, stories like that as well. So, why don't you jump in from your perspective about, how movement can help our emotional health?
So, one example is you were talking about the client you had. I had a student that this was when I first moved to this area, and she was one of the first students that I had. She at that time would have been late 60s probably, but had collapsed on one side, so her posture was slightly twisted with a dropped shoulder. And what she found was when she went walking, she actually ended up having her anxiety attacks while she was walking.
Mm,
And the reason we discovered later on was after we had been doing movement with Tai Chi and her posture came back up to more of a straight,
mm-hmm,
the pressure that was on the organ systems that are related to the emotions of anxiety,
mm-hmm,
kidney and bladder, they
mm-hmm.
actually started to have more space, everything lined up, and all of a
Mm.
sudden, the anxiety disappeared. And so then her choices when she was out walking became ones of how far can I go? How much energy do I have? And then choosing different routes each day. So as you were talking about taking that 20-minute walk, get started, fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the next part is while you're walking is to look at that posture, because the posture, if you're holding anything hostage, then you're going to have the emotions come up that are related to those muscles and that structure. And this gives you a way to start to really shift things. That's where walking, where you can swing both arms. That's where lifting your head so it's not forward like it would be at the computer, but being able to lift it up and look around and see what's going on in the surroundings.
Right.
That all makes a difference to what happens to the posture. So yeah, it was pretty profound.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And which actually that segues right into our next point because you were saying, pay attention to the posture.
Mhm.
And for me, that's all about mindful movement. So people have heard mindful movement, but then, it's like, oh, that's so woo and blah, blah. No, it's paying attention. It's awareness. Just like you said, paying attention to the posture. You can do mindful movement with the walk. Like you said, pay attention to the posture. Pay attention to how your body feels with each step that you take. How is your foot hitting the ground? How is your arms swinging? That's all part of the mindfulness. And you can take that to the next point of when you start paying attention to the awareness of your body while you're walking, it also helps ground you in the present moment because you're walking. That is something you're currently doing. And so now you're paying attention to how you're walking, which is grounding you in what you're doing at that moment. And your mind doesn't have time to go think about all of this other overwhelming stuff. So there's less chaos because you're paying attention to your walk. And
Mhm.
I would say too that for those who are just starting out, if you want to take it to the next level, you could also bring in breath work even when you're walking, paying attention to how you're breathing when you walk. Maybe add, okay, with each step, I'm going to, inhale and exhale on the same count or, things of that nature. And being able to focus on your breath during the movement, which is something that I teach and learn even like in yoga. It's the breath with the movement. It helps you align the body and the mind by combining those two things. And so, I, always suggest that with my clients that they start off, if you're trying to create a new practice, start off with slow, deliberate movements, like stretching or walking in the morning that kind of sets the tone for the day. And you can add breath work to that. And there are so many things that you can do, but you're the movement expert, so I'm going to let you take over this particular point. So
I'm
let's
going to do an example for people. I think this
okay.
would be really helpful. So, if you take a breath in now and notice what kind of breath you have, you can also notice actually where your posture is. So, you could notice if your head is actually on top of your shoulders, maybe it's forward. If if your spine feels like it's compacted or if it's stretched, most likely everybody feels a little bit compacted,
Right.
sitting down kind of
Yeah.
thing. Okay, so you know what your breath feels like at the moment. So now you're going to tap from your shoulder to your palm with firm pressure. Tap all the way to the bottom. And we're going to do this 3 times, top to bottom, and then we do the other side. Okay, and now take a breath in and see what happens. Deeper?
Yeah, it almost for me it almost felt like my body lifted up more to let more air in.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people don't realize about movement is movement makes everything else you do effortless.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
so if you sit confined trying to get a project done and you're like, I'm not getting up from this chair until I'm done, you actually are limiting your capacity. And then if you throw in some movement, all of a sudden you open things up and there's a completely different way of looking at the project you're doing, but also the effort that's going to go into it. If you were to tap your arm from the top to the bottom and open up those lungs before you went for your walk, wow, that's a different walk.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then the other piece is because some people will go walking, they're going to have the dog on the leash, they're going to have
Hmm.
a cup of something in their hand, and they're actually not going to be able to swing their arms. The arm swing is opening up and engaging the brain, and it's waking everything up in a beautiful synergy. So you
Hmm.
need that swing to be able to
Yes.
get you there. But
Yes.
when you swing, you're also along the lung meridian, which goes to the thumb, and you keep stretching it as your arm goes back and forth. Not with forceful, it just is
Right.
natural. When you're standing up straight, your arms will automatically swing, and you have this lovely little massage opening and
Mm.
closing the lung line. And that is grief, guilt, and regret.
Yes. 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 I like how you brought that back to the emotional connections because a lot of the work that I do is helping clients understand the connectivity between those emotions and emotional states in what's actually manifesting in their physical body. And I often tell them if you want complete healing of what's going on physically, you have to address what's going on emotionally as well. And you're absolutely right. Lungs, in particular, one of the biggest emotions associated with the lungs is grief.
Mhm,
And I have dealt with that so much with so many clients that have come that have respiratory issues or, breathing issues and that kind of thing. And usually there is some sort of emotional grief that also needs to be dealt with that they didn't even realize was playing a part in what is going on with them physically, whether it's it's the grief of loss of a loved one, or grief of the loss of a relationship, or any other type. There are different types of grief, so grief isn't always like death and loss, that kind of way.
mhm,
Sometimes it's like grief of losing a job, and then next thing you know, it's like you're having a hard time breathing. That's all connected.
mhm,
But for today's conversation, doing, we're bringing forth how physical movement can help reduce the emotional.
mhm.
And, like you said, the swinging of the arms can
Yeah,
help with this.
yeah.
And there are so many other movements that help with other emotions that are connected to that particular body part.
Mhm,
And I think it's an important thing for people to understand more on a more common basis. A lot of people are not aware of that. And that's one of the reasons why I've really wanted to bring this topic out today, because I feel like it's a very, very important discussion that needs to be had. It's information that people need to understand, they need to be aware of, and how interconnected everything is: body, mind, and spirit, and
mhm.
soul. Two totally different things, but that's another conversation. So well, thank you for, that little demonstration. I encourage you all to take that and add it to your tool belt on things that you can do before you take your walk. I personally like walks because walks are an easy way for most people to get started, even if it's starting with very short walks just to get the body movement. And I particularly love that walks also help pump the lymphatic system, and all of that plays into just being able to detox the body. And when we physically detox, it can also help us emotionally detox as well, because toxins are toxins. And so, and again, it's all connected. So it's important to understand the relationship between movement and emotional and mental. All right. So, which, will segues right into our next topic point here. And it's about building a relationship between body and emotion. So we've been talking a lot about how this does this and this does that, but how do you build that relationship between your body and your emotions? So emotions, we've talked about this before, emotions are often stored in the body, in different parts of the body. Certain emotions tend to be stored in certain parts of the body. It just is. Okay. We call it the issues in the tissues. so, so movement can help release those emotions, which we've talked about that before. We've talked about how, we can do certain movements when emotions get stuck in the body. I think the last time we talked about this, we talked specifically about hips. Is that right? We were talking about hips
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and the trauma that and emotions that get stored in the hips, and being able to do movements that opens up the hips will help us, release those emotions. And and how, like, tight shoulders can represent, emotional burdens, like just the weight of the world. I call it the weight of the world. You're just like carrying around that burden, and it's just like, pushing your shoulders down. Or another one I see a lot with people that it's like their jaws hurt because they're constantly clenched, and that can be like, unexpressed anger or tension, or what I call ruminating on the same thing, just chewing on it, over and over again, which can lead to like teeth grinding and all that kind of stuff. So, one of the things that I generally will help clients learn to do is what is called a body scan, which is just noticing where you're holding tension. And I believe that's something that you do as well. Am I correct?
Probably not quite the same way that you do. So do you
Okay.
wanna explain yours, and then I can
Okay.
explain
All
some of
right.
my view? Yeah. They're the same, it's just that our viewpoint is we're just coming at it from a different angle.
Right,
It's
right.
really
And that's
cool.
why I love having these conversations, because it's like we talk about the same topic, but we come at it from different angles, because there's usually more than one way that you can address certain things. And that's important to know. This that, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Well, that's the phrase here is not necessarily a good phrase. So scratch that. All right. So yeah. So for me, a body scan is more along the lines of, it's like I generally would just say, I'll just close your eyes and just, start, from the head, and just kind of draw your focus to the top of your body, and then just kind of just go down through the body and just see where you're holding attention. So, so for me, it's more of a guided exercise. I know for you, it's probably different. And the way my body scans are is rooted more like in yoga, in somatic practices. So, but it's more about drawing awareness to your body, and just coming within and noticing what part of the body feels wonky. And when you notice what part of the body is wonky, it's like, okay, well, that's probably some place that you're holding the tension. Why are you holding tension there? What is that related to? Again, there are certain parts of the body that hold certain emotions. As we talked about, shoulders is burden. It's like, what's burdening you? What's holding you down? What have you taken on? Whether it's right or left makes a difference. It's like, are you like taking on everybody else's burdens, or are you worried about something? You know, yeah, are you having trouble breathing? Okay, if you're having trouble breathing, what are you grieving? If your feet hurt, it's like, okay, so feet is about stuckness. Why do you feel like you're stuck? Why are you stuck? So for me, it's more about that. It's about paying attention, bringing your awareness in, and noticing what part of the body is feeling tight, what part of the body is holding tension, what part of the body is hurting, because that's usually going to be your first clue to what's going on emotionally.
Mhm. Mhm. And then if you go from that place, then you also have, are you operating in an isolated capacity that
Mm.
the tissue is like a bicep curl? You're just trying to get that bicep to do that one action. Or is your body integrated so that when you move, everything is moving together as one? And the way that I could demonstrate this the best is if you turn your head to the side, see how far you can see, but notice what it feels like to turn each direction. And you may have seen me do this before, but I'm going to bring it in regards to integration. So turn your head and then notice how it feels. And you'll notice it's an isolated movement
Hmm.
because we're trained that it's an
Right.
isolated movement. Because we use that all the time. Like people use that as a way. Okay, so now what I'm going to suggest to you is integrate the movement. That's all I'm going to tell you. Now turn your head and see what it feels like to turn. What came along for the ride?
Uh, what came along for the ride? Huh. Well, I actually heard like a little crackle when I turned that second time.
And so when your head started to turn, did you notice that the sternum
Yeah,
started to be there? And
yeah,
you may have noticed that the belly also wanted to participate.
yeah. Well, I did notice that my head was able to turn more.
Yes. Yeah. So we have our isolated movement, which
Yes.
is going to be effort, which is going to be pockets of emotion in different muscles, breaking us into parts.
Mm,
And then you have integrated movement, where you go to turn your head and the rest of the body goes with you. You open up your range of motion, but now you also have a conversation going on in your body. Now, emotions that could be pocketed have a chance to let go because they can talk to each other. And we
oh,
all know how that feels when we have a friend who comes over for tea
yes.
and we sit down with our friend and you put the tea on and you have the conversation. You're like, oh, I feel so much better. It's the same with the body.
Yeah.
One piece is talking, one piece is talking, and nothing's speaking to anything else in a capacity that has any value. And then all of a sudden you integrate it, and wow. So now if we integrate it on a bigger, I suggested integration and look at how much happened. So you can see the power of intention. But if we instigate it, if we do the ear rub, which I'm sure that your
I love that
viewers
you're right.
will know the ear rub, and it's just because it's so incredibly powerful. So
Yes,
I'm going to
I
rub.
will just sit on the sofa sometimes and do that, and it's like, ooh.
So I'm, for those people that are maybe listening in, I'm rubbing the ear from the top to the bottom 3 times on one side, and then I'm going to do it on the other side. And the ear has points that reaches a conversation all over the body. So we're actually waking up that conversation. It's like being on the party line. And so now if you turn your head, see what happens to the rest of the body. So if you turn, and now you may notice shoulders, hips. You might have noticed right down to the feet that there was an integration of conversation. Our organs function so much better
Yeah,
when that integration is going on because they need each other in order to do their best work. And when you start to notice the jaw is tight,
mhm,
you notice that the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You're not integrating all those systems and providing them with their very best. And those clues are in what you have in awareness.
yeah,
This is tight. Okay, I need to spend some time making sure I'm fully engaged as a whole-bodied person,
yeah,
not an isolated person. Yeah.
right. So, yeah, so we again, we're talking about the same thing, but from different modalities, methodology, if you will. But it is still about body awareness and noticing what's
Mhm,
happening and why is it happening. But you have offered some additional tools for integration to be able to become even more aware and open up that movement. The funny thing is that when you were talking, one of the things that came to me, because I'm geek, I'm a geek girl, is I started thinking about sometimes when I'm trying to help clients understand energy centers and chakras and everything, and I'm trying to explain it to them in a non-woo way. One of the things I often use is like circuits in a house and a circuit breaker and things like that. And so when you start talking about the body parts talking to the other body parts and the pockets and the emotions being able to talk with the friends and stuff, I started thinking about circuits. Again, like I said, geek, totally geek. I started thinking about circuits and how the way the flow of electricity works, and how sometimes the flow can be chopped off at a certain point,
mhm,
and being able to open that circuit up so that energy can go along that entire circuit and reach the end of that circuit makes a total difference.
mhm,
So, like, you're trying to turn on the light, and something else is on that circuit that is disrupting it. The light won't come on when you turn on the switch because there's a disruption.
mhm,
But if you can remove that disruption and you flip the switch, the light comes on.
mhm. And if you have that clenched jaw or you have that tension in the shoulders, and you say to somebody, you know, find joy. And they're like, I can't find joy. This pain in my neck is driving me crazy. Well, joy is on the other side of the flow. So you
Mhm.
got to be able to get to the flow. And if you think about, there was the circuit, but also if you think of the beaver dam and you
Mhm.
think of the waters flowing in, same as that circuitry, somebody puts in that nice beaver dam and this pool starts to emerge and it gets bigger and bigger. So you think about, I'm trying to think of a muscle, the pecs.
Mhm.
So in the pecs, that's related to stomach, and that's related to is to being able to digest emotions. So you're here and you're compacted. If you think of that as being the water next to the beaver dam, and
Mhm.
the water's coming through, pecs are totally fine, and then you sit at your computer for 4 hours and you made the beaver dam,
Mhm.
and now you've got this pool of emotion that did not get to digest, and then you get up from there and you turn around and you snap at somebody
Yeah.
and you go, why did I snap? Or they're looking at you going, what is wrong with you? And it was because the system was so overloaded that emotion just burst out, and you need to bring it back into flow to find that you flip that electric switch and everything just flows beautifully through. There aren't any spots where it's going to beaver dam.
Right. I like that analogy. I like the analogy. I'm always looking for ways to be able to explain things to people
Mhm,
in terms that they can understand. I know sometimes, this information can become a little highbrow, and my goal is always to try to explain it in layman's terms that where most people can understand it, because I think it's important. So thank you for sharing your wisdom in that particular analogy, because I think a lot of people can also be able to relate to that one. Probably relate to that one more than the circuit stuff. Again, I'm a science girl, so I get kind of geeky. So, and I try not to be so geeky, but it's me. I own it. So,
but I think it's so freeing when people realize that the emotions they're experiencing are not forever, and they're also not even for tomorrow.
yeah.
Those emotions are for right now, and it's a signal. Just like the neck pain, just like the jaw pain, it's a signal to say you are out of balance and you need something to bring yourself into balance. And when you do, joy can arrive.
Hmm.
and some of the other emotions, love or gratitude, they can all be there, but it's really hard if everything's been blocked up in a certain way. You're overpowered by the emotions that are a part of those systems and
Right.
those muscles. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I want to take a moment to go back because I had something else pop into my head about you mentioned about digesting emotions. And digestion is a huge, huge thing.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to revisit that a little bit, based on the experience that I've had and a lot of the people that I've dealt with. I often will have many clients that will come that have so much digestive distress of some sort.
Hmm.
And almost always it has to do with some sort of emotional turmoil that they're either currently dealing with or is from the past that they haven't dealt with, and it's totally affecting their entire digestive system. Now, there are different points in the digestive system that have specific types of emotions that are involved in it. But I think it's important for people to understand that because we're talking about connectivity here, and that if you're having digestive issues, there's most likely some sort of emotional turmoil that you need to deal with, whether it's current or past. Specifically, like some of the stuff I deal with people will come in and they will have issues with their small intestine.
Hmm.
And one of the first things, I will ask them is, are you having trouble holding proper boundaries? Are
Hmm.
you always saying yes to things that, you don't really wanna do? Do you, do you have a hard time saying no? Do you let people walk all over you? Most of the time, small intestinal issues are going to be the inability to hold proper boundaries, and um it's part of the not digesting, if you will. But in the case of the small intestine not holding proper boundaries, it allows all of this stuff that you're either absorbing that you shouldn't be absorbing, or you're not allowing those emotions to dissipate. Because that's what the small intestine is. It's all about the the absorption of nutrients. So you're not providing yourself with your own nutrients.
Hmm.
When there's colon involved, often there is, I call it the holding on to the old CRAP. It's like, so you're clenching, you're holding on to stuff that you don't need to hold on to. And those are the types of clues that your physical body can give you about what's going on the emotional and mental side of things. So yeah, today's show is about how physical movement can help you on the emotional side of things and have emotional and mental resilience. But you also need to be able to understand those clues that the body is trying to give you.
Hmm. Hmm. And if you're looking at small intestine, one of the muscles that's related to that is the quad.
Mm,
And the quad has four parts to it. It's a very big muscle, and most people just assume it's working.
right.
But very often it'll actually relax, or only parts of it will be working, not all the parts. And then you have misalignment in the knee, which goes down to misalignment in the ankle. And then you also have um, where the knees will hyperextend off
Mm,
the back. And,
yes. Yes.
and if you come back then to those emotions that are with that, and you start to really look at what am I not digesting, what am I not supporting myself with,
Hmm.
that will actually transform. That changes lower back pain,
Yeah.
that changes neck pain, that changes the alignment of the spine. Just so, so powerful.
Yes, yes. And it's, and it's very important for us to nourish ourselves as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
need to provide ourselves with nourishment.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's not always physical and food nourishment. It's also emotional nourishment. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
all right. Well, let's move on to the next point. So we're telling you all of this stuff. Okay, you can do this, you can do that. But here's the thing. You can know what to do, but it's not going to do any good if you don't actually do it. Okay? So, part of being able to put these actions into place, consistency is a huge key to all of this. You may not feel like doing it, but if you want to see the results, you have to do it and you have to be consistent with it. So, this is where, I would start to talk about the importance of routine. It's like you can, when you first get started, it can be very hard to get going, but once you establish a routine and it becomes part of what you do, it's easier to do that, and then you will eventually see the results there. So one of the things that I like to help people understand is that start small. Even if you do start with 5 minutes a day of intentional movement, it can start to help with that mental shift. You start seeing that change from that little bit, and then you'll start doing it more, and then you'll start doing it more. But consistency is the key. You have to start somewhere and you have to stick with it. Even when you don't feel like it, consistency will help you get past that not feeling like doing it, and that will create more resilience as you do it. And that's when it becomes routine. And the routine creates the stable foundation that you need, which makes it easier for you to not only do those routines that increases the endorphins and decreases the stress and all of that, but being able to have that routine and sticking with it will also eventually help you be able to handle the ups and downs that you feel emotionally throughout your day-to-day life. And I think that it's very important for people to be able to create and establish those routines. So what do you feel about that, about the whole routine thing? Do you agree with that?
And there's two ways that people can look at it. They can look at it from the reactive position of, I need to do this. I have to work at it. Or they could look at it from the proactive piece,
I get to do this.
right? And then there's the second part is, I'm going to wait until my lower back is really sore. I can't get out of bed in the morning. Okay, I guess I'll go do it. Or bypassing those the signals and waiting for the signals, getting active first so you
Mhm.
don't have the signal. So there's different approaches of looking at it, and most people will wait until they have the signals, and the signal gets stronger, and then it gets a little bit stronger, and then you're like, oh my, I'm so much pain, and now it's work because you have this tight body that you're going to try
Mhm.
to move, and it's not going to be really joyous until
Right,
you start to unwind it. And
right.
that's the part that you're talking about, making sure it's a regular habit. But if you start to think of it from the proactive perspective of, I have this opportunity to go for a walk so that
Mhm.
my body does not have to signal I have been neglecting it. I
Yeah.
have this opportunity to gift it first, and it has the opportunity then to function optimally. And the other piece of that is, which with you're saying with the consistency, is it's cumulative,
Mm.
because if you start to do one piece and then you do another piece in a week's time, it's like starting all over again. But if you do a piece and then you do another piece and then you do another piece, they start to connect together.
Mhm.
and you magnify. And that's a lot different than I'm going to go do my workout, and I'm going to go do my workout, and I'm going to go do my workout. But
Yes.
it's like, I'm just going to dabble these pieces in, and the body goes, oh, I can trust you. You're starting to make me
Right.
feel better. And these pieces are working better. And now that's working even better. But now we can start to heal this because you've provided enough for us to get to there.
Right.
And then you just keep sprinkling.
Yeah.
Um, but it's proactive. So for people in their mindset to start thinking, don't wait till your knee is out of alignment. And then you go, I should probably get some leg strength. Don't wait for that. Go,
Right.
I want leg strength. I want to have
Right.
posture strength. And I hopefully what they'll think of is I want whole body integration because I want to be maximizing who I am as a human being rather than isolating myself up and then working on complaints.
Right. I love that. I love that you brought that up because sometimes it's a choice and you have to make a choice. And making that choice to change how you look at it can be a huge difference.
Mhm.
And that can start shifting the mental attitude right there. And sometimes, and even for us that are professionals, we still struggle sometimes too.
Mhm.
So I have to often catch myself, stop saying I have to or I need to, and change it to I get to.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite sayings when it comes to movement and exercise is that exercise is a celebration of what my body can do.
Yeah.
And so when you start thinking about it like that, it's, I can walk. I get to walk. You know, there are people who struggle to walk and they wish that they had the range of motion that you have, that although you feel like your motion is limited, there are others that wish they had a little bit of what you have. So when you
Mhm.
start thinking about it in the terms of, I get to do this, I have, you know, I have the health that I have now that I can do these movements that's going to help me even more.
Mhm.
And that's all of that proactive that you were talking about and that
Mhm.
mind shift. And
Yeah.
when your mind starts shifting and then you add the physical movement to it, it shifts even more.
Yeah.
And and it, like you said, it it becomes a cumulative effect.
Yeah. And one of the principles in Tai Chi is less is more. And I
Mm.
think well, our mentality of, the aerobic era, right? Of you've got to go work out hard. If you're not
Mhm.
sweating and you're not like, huffing and puffing, you're not having an impact. But for a lot of people who are really tight and holding that tension, that kind of workout can put more stress into the
Right.
body. So in Tai Chi, we're looking at less is more. So when you back up and you do, if you do like, if I just circle my hands out in front, from a person observing me, they're going to look like I'm doing this great big long stretch with my arm, and it's giving me a nice back stretch because
Yeah.
that would be their exercise brain thinking, oh, that's what's happening. But what actually is going on is this beautiful circle with the hands.
Yeah.
The arms actually never go out straight. They're always slightly bent.
Yeah.
And that's the less is more. I could go like this and pull tissue, but if I start to go like this, there's this little massaging inside
Mhm.
that is talking, the spine is being inspired and it's talking to all the organ systems. It can't
Mm.
talk to the organ systems if you're stretching because then things have to let go for you to do the stretch and other things have to engage. But if you are in a balance of back and forth flow, then
Yeah.
you have this opportunity for everybody to be in the conversation. And people most often then when they do less, they think they're cheating, but then they feel this chi start to flow. So
Yeah.
if people have been moving their hands with me, they may notice that their fingertips are starting to vibrate.
Yeah. Yeah.
the circulation is reaching the end of the fingertip. The lymph fluid is flowing through
Yeah.
because we were gentle.
Yeah.
And that awareness then of how you can impact things. So thinking about the choices that you make, listening to the body and those cues that you did in your scan, and then what do I need in order to support my system? Do I need to hit it hard? Maybe not at the moment, maybe later in the day, maybe right now I just need to be very gentle. And then when you say, yeah, I'm going to hop my bike and I'm going to go for a really good ride, and the body goes, yes, that's awesome. But it's now feeling like it could let go of the tension
Yeah.
and function in a way that, you're going to have full strength on the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Tai Chi. I love doing Tai Chi as well, as you know, but I'm nowhere near the expert in it that you are. So that's why I let you hold those particular conversations. But yeah, I love Tai Chi, particularly because of the energy movement that comes with each of the flows. And, so often I will just be doing stuff around the house or whatever, and I'll just get like this burst of an idea of, okay, I'm just going to go, do a little hand,
Pattern.
movement, and most of the time it's not a particular pattern that is like, oh, okay, of a design to flow. It's just my body just decides it wants to move like this. And often just having that awareness of how my body wants to move and just taking the opportunity to do the movement, whether it's like a real movement or a scheduled movement or a part of a flow and just moving, it makes all the difference in the world because your body is cueing you into what it wants at that particular time. And
Mhm,
if you can give it what it wants, even if it's just a couple minutes, it can totally change the rest of your day. It can
mhm.
totally change your outlook on life. And I know that's very dramatic for some, but it can. It can change your
Yeah.
outlook on life. It can change your outlook on your day. It can create these moments of gratitude
Mhm,
in the movement
mhm,
at that particular moment that builds into something bigger,
mhm.
something greater, that joy that you're trying to find. It can start from a little hand movement.
Yeah.
And that's just how amazing our bodies and our minds and the connectivity of it all is. So, yeah.
Mhm.
So, oh, I'm getting goosebumps.
And I think it would be important here to talk a little bit about those people who have chronic signals. I'll call it
Okay.
that. Chronic
Okay.
signals that are coming in, and the only thing they hear is that static, and they've forgotten how to hear of the silence, the
Yes.
places where things are in harmony, the places where things really move well or function well. Um, and then if you can realize that maybe you have been listening to the static, how you can start to change your day to listen to the silence or to listen to the joy. The elbow moves so beautifully, like you were saying, just to find that. You go in the kitchen and do the dance, put on your favorite music, and you feel that joint opening and moving and feeling so lovely, and then being aware of what that feels like, because they're so aware of the static and what the stiff joint feels like. Where in the body do you find that joyous movement? Because that exists, but sometimes we just close the blinds and we
Yeah.
don't realize we're not seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, which brings me to our last point because we're, getting close on time. But so we've been talking about movement and how it can help us on the emotional side of things. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about how movement can also be a tool for emotional empowerment. Because in the end, these conversations we have are about empowering people to take control of their own health and their own bodies and their own emotional states and their own mental states. So movement can be a tool for emotional empowerment, because consistent movement fosters the self belief that you can overcome challenges, because as you start to overcome it and you're like, oh, I can do this, oh, I can do this, that starts to build you up on the inside that I can do this. And once you start believing in yourself that I can do this, it may start with, oh, I can do this walk without pain, oh, I can do this exercise, oh, I can do this. And then that translate into being able to do other things as well. Not just movement things, but the great idea you have. Oh, you know what? I can actually totally accomplish that. And
Mhm.
that's how that physical movement that changes the mental activity, that changes your outlook, can create these wonderful grand things that you can eventually do. And I personally feel that movement is an act of self-care. We often talk about self-care. It's like one of the things I always tell everybody to is like, no is self-care. Saying no to things is self-care. You don't need to do everything. So there are other things too that I attribute to self-care. And for me, movement is also an act of self-care, because when you move, you're telling yourself, I'm worth the effort.
Mhm.
And that builds up your own inner worthiness as well,
Mhm.
which totally changes the conversation on everything. So, what do you feel about movement as an emotional empowerment tool?
Well, I have a lot of people that will ask me, how do I get done all the things I do in a day? And, and they think I'm lying when I say it's Tai Chi. It's because I made a commitment. Yes, I'm the instructor, but that means I get to class. I can't skip out because it's cold tonight and I don't feel like going out, that doesn't count. I have to be there. That was a commitment that I made. And the other is the connection to others. It doesn't matter to me if one person is there, 25 people are there. The conversation I get to have with someone else in a healing capacity, just because we're just engaged in Tai Chi together,
Hmm.
means that we've inspired each other to be better. And it also is the gift that I give myself. And I feel so much better when I have more Tai Chi classes in my week than when I have less. So sometimes in the summer, things get canceled out because people are busy. But then I have to make that commitment to myself to make sure I go and still practice. But then it's like always shorter. But when I go out with other people and I'm in that group setting, we could go for hours. We just get lost in the
Yeah,
time. And it's so lovely because time does stop when you're joyously moving and you're doing what you love. And that's what feeds me to do everything else that I do. And it's a commitment that I've made. Yeah.
awesome, awesome. All right, so we're coming to the end of our time. So, we've talked about a bunch of different things today, and you can do it. Start small. Start with something and then build upon that. And I actually did create a resource that I'm going to make available to you guys, and I will drop it in the comments a little bit later. And it's tips for starting a mindful movement practice for beginners. So if you're just starting to try to start with some sort of mindful movement, it's just like some couple little tips, to help you kind of get going. But I want to leave you with basically, the message that consistent movement isn't about building physical strength. Yeah, it can help with that, but that's not what it's about. It's about cultivating emotional resilience, inner peace, and a stronger connection to yourself. Because when you move, you're telling yourself that you're worth it. The benefits that are going to come from that movement will start to manifest itself. And not only will it manifest itself in physical strength, but also emotional resilience, because the movement will also help you release all of that emotional blockage that you need to process and get rid of. And so it helps in so many ways. But in order to do that, consistency is key. So pick something small, start small, and just start doing it and keep doing it. And then see how it makes you feel, both physically and emotionally. As you start to feed into how much better you feel, you're going to find that you want to do it even more because you'll feel even better. And it starts this huge snowball effect. So I encourage you to come up with some sort of mindful movement practice. Start with something you like and just be consistent with it and see what happens. So, Michelle, would you like to leave us with some final parting words?
I would. I would. So, from my resources, if you're on my YouTube channel, which is at Michelle Greenwell, there is a playlist called Tai Chi Wellness.
Okay.
That one has single little videos of just individual things you can do. There's other videos there too, but just pick one. And it's a movement you've never done before. Just as you were talking about, get to know what it means for you. Where do you notice in your body by doing that scan? Where do you notice that you find more joy, more freedom of movement, deeper breath, circulation picks up? And then know how that feels for you in the long term of the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And then do it for a few days and then go to the next one. And pretty soon you'll find you'll be stringing them together in certain orders or looking at routines that you can put together. But there's so much resource there.
Yeah.
And each one of those, for me, I can be on meetings and turn around, and sometimes underneath the camera, I can be doing something, and that completely balances me for the next part or for keeping my mind open and available for creative ideas rather than reactionary kind of emotional, comments that will come back. I
Right.
don't know if we could do that. Instead, I'm like, oh, that's a good possibility. But what if we did? And then, off you are in possibility instead of in restricted thoughts. So,
All
yeah.
right. Well, there you have it. You guys go check out those videos. Michelle does wonderful videos, and most of the videos that she does is very easy and gentle as well. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I can't do Tai Chi. Trust me, you can do them. They're easy. Incorporate them. Okay.
And a
All right.
lot of them are seated as
And
well.
a lot of them are seated. There you go.
So, you don't have to worry about, can I stand or do I need my balance or any of that. You don't have to worry about it.
All right. See, there you go. No excuses. So go grab those.
That's right.
All right, so that is it for today's show. Thank you for joining us. And remember, we do these discussions with Dr. Michelle once a month on the first Friday of every month. So make sure you come back again to see what else that we're going to talk about. And, I, I'm at a loss for words at this moment, but thank you once again for joining us, and we appreciate that you have put, yeah, she's shown us her tea. Exactly, exactly. We appreciate
Celebrate
that.
your dreams. Yep.
We appreciate that you have tuned in and you value our opinion and our expertise to help you move along in your journey. And I want you all to remember that health and wellness isn't a destination, it's your daily journey. That's it for today's show. I'll see you next time. Bye.
The journey is the reward.
Exactly. This episode is brought to you by Living Naturally for Life, the Greenwell Center for Holistic Health, and Cape Breton Tea Company. comment, like, subscribe.